Mermaids. For centuries, they have aroused our curiosity and captured our imagination. But are they just legends? It may seem like the stuff of fairy tales, but the ocean hides mysteries that science has yet to decipher. And who knows, mermaids may not be as fictional as we think. History itself contains intriguing accounts of sightings made by explorers such as Christopher Columbus and Henry Hudson. Yes, these creatures may not be just a figment of our imagination. Perhaps they are more real than we would like to believe. Think about it. Why do these stories persist over the centuries? In almost every culture, we find legends about aquatic beings that are half human, half fish, each with their own details, but all converging on the same mysterious and seductive figure. Could so many people be mistaken or hallucinating in the same way? This raises an inevitable question. What do these legends really mean? Do they have any basis in reality, or do they simply reflect our own fears and desires? In this video, we'll explore everything: historical accounts, possible scientific explanations, and even artifacts that have been presented as evidence over the years. And who knows, by the end, you might realize that these stories may hide more truth than we're prepared to accept. Get ready for a journey through uncharted waters, where myths and reality mix. And after all, if so many generations have believed these stories, perhaps it's time to ask ourselves, are we really alone when facing the unknown? Or are mermaids still swimming out there, challenging everything we think we know? Since the beginning of time, the ocean has always inspired a sense of mystery in explorers, like a vast blue carpet hiding secrets that few dared to uncover. Just imagine, in ancient times, every wave could hide a legend, from colossal whales to the much feared and fascinating mermaids. The idea of beings that were half human, half something else, dominated the popular imagination. And the enchantment was not just fear, but also fascination with these unknown beings. Mermaids, in particular, have always been there, arousing the same curiosity we have today about cryptids, those creatures that seem to emerge from between the lines of folklore and enter our world. At that time, the idea of sailing the seas was like challenging the unknown. There were those who swore they had seen monstrous sea creatures, and many sailors, when telling stories about these encounters, saw their stories become legends that traveled even faster than they themselves. For the medieval sailor, facing these creatures was like a folklore adventure, where the line between reality and fantasy was thin. Imagine the whispers among sailors at dusk, recounting with fear and excitement the details of a last sighting. And so, the myths only grew, gaining strength and being passed down from generation to generation. But why this fixation with the mysteries of the sea? Perhaps it is because of the vastness and depth of the waters, which, in a way, represent the unknown that we all have within ourselves. The seas have become a living metaphor for human curiosity and the desire to explore beyond borders. Who wouldn't feel the urge to venture into the waters to see a mermaid at least once in their life? Or perhaps, just to confirm that they don't exist. Either way, the sea remains, and with it, the enigma of mermaids and marine cryptids, challenging our rationality. Who wouldn't feel the urge to venture into the waters to see a mermaid at least once in their life? Or perhaps, just to confirm that they don't exist. Either way, the sea remains, and with it, the enigma of mermaids and marine cryptids, challenging our rationality. Today, we still have this tendency to seek the extraordinary, whether in urban legends or in new stories about cryptids. With each scientific advance, the ocean remains with its mysteries, reminding us that, no matter how much technology we can create, there are still secrets that escape us. And that's where the magic happens. The world needs these stories, these tales that make us dream. After all, if man has nothing to dream about, what would be the next step? The first myths about mermaids did not involve fish tails and shiny scales, but rather feathers and claws. In the ancient Greek imagination, mermaids were creatures that were half woman, half bird, and their function was quite dark, to attract sailors with their hypnotizing song, leading them to ruin. This type of mermaid had an almost predatory nature, and was the very representation of the dangers of temptation and the tortuous paths of the human mind. Over time, however, their image evolved. What began as winged creatures evolved into something closer to the figure we know today. The Middle Ages brought a new layer of mystery and fear to these figures, especially in Europe. This is when mermaids with fish tails, the upper part like an attractive woman, and the lower part completely adapted to the sea, emerged. But this charm came with a warning. Whoever approached them could lose their way, their boat, or even their life. Their representation was almost like a warning in the form of a legend, illustrating the dangers of the waters and the desires they personified. It was as if mermaids represented what men should fear, but could not resist seeking. The changes in the representation of mermaids over time also reflect the way cultures viewed the sea itself. In the beginning, the ocean was home to hybrid, mixed and untamed creatures, representing disorder and chaos. Over time, as humans ventured further afield, mermaid stories evolved, bringing with them an aura of seduction mixed with danger, an almost irresistible combination. It was as if each new legend attempted to answer the question, what lies in the depths? And even more intriguing, why do we want to know so much? These evolved images of mermaids continue to captivate today, as we see in popular culture and modern stories. From folk tales to cinema, mermaids have become ambiguous figures, sometimes dangerous, sometimes enchanting. They not only inhabit the ocean, but also the human imagination, remaining alive in each story that recreates and revisits them. And the more we explore them, the more these mysterious figures seem to hold up a mirror that reflects our own mysteries and insecurities. The fascination with mermaids is not limited to one corner of the world. It is a global phenomenon. In every culture, we find similar creatures, each adapted to the local environment and beliefs. In Asia, for example, we have the Rinyu, a mystical being that inhabits the waters and displays traits of both human and fish. On the African continent, we find the Jengu, an aquatic spirit worshipped in Cameroon, whose figure is linked to rituals of healing and prosperity. And in Brazil, who has never heard of the Epipira, which emerges from rivers and seas to capture the imagination, and sometimes the people themselves. These global mermaid legends speak not only of curiosity, but of a deep connection with water, the source of life and mystery. Each of these creatures holds within itself the duality between the enchanting and the terrifying, the known and the unknown. Just as the Jengu in Africa is seen as a being that brings healing, it is also a powerful force that one must be wary of. From Japan to the Caribbean, these aquatic beings appear in various forms, reflecting the very nature of the sea, beautiful and dangerous. They are figures that remind people to respect and revere the waters. These legends are also a way of transmitting teachings. The existence of these creatures often serves as a warning to those who approach the sea, a kind of reminder not to underestimate the forces of nature. Imagine a child growing up in a coastal village, hearing stories of the Epipira and other aquatic creatures. Through folklore, the child learns to respect the dangers of the sea, not to play in deep waters, and to remember that the natural world also has its guardians. The legend, then, becomes not just a tale, but a valuable lesson. These mermaids and aquatic spirits spread throughout the world reveal something about us, an innate need to create stories to explain what we do not understand. It is as if each culture tries to answer the same mystery with its own interpretation. And even if we have never seen these creatures with our own eyes, they continue to swim through the collective imagination from generation to generation. After all, that is what makes a legend, isn't it? Something that, even without proof, seems alive in the minds and hearts of those who hear it. Since ancient times, seafaring adventurers have reported encounters with figures that resemble the mermaids of our myths. Christopher Columbus, on one of his voyages to the New World, claimed to have seen 3 of these creatures near his ship. Interestingly, he commented that the mermaids were not as beautiful as imagined, which leads us to suspect that Columbus may have crossed paths with manatees, whose silhouette from a distance can even deceive dreamy sailors. Even so, his account fired the imagination, leading many to wonder what really inhabited the deep waters. Other accounts, such as that of explorer Henry Hudson, only reinforced the mystery. In 1608, members of his crew claimed to have seen a mermaid in the cold waters of the Arctic. The creature was described as having pale skin, a feminine face, and a fish tail. These details only increased the fascination and fear of unexplored waters, making each voyage an open field for new legends. After all, what other creature besides a mermaid could be swimming in those distant, icy waters? Stories of sightings have not been restricted to the West. In Japan, in 1736, a specimen of a mermaid was discovered and preserved for years, known as the Enjuan mermaid. However, in 2022, a study revealed that it was a handmade artifact made of paper, fabric, and fish parts. Still, this discovery did not diminish the fascination, but it showed how willing people were to believe and even create representations to keep the legend alive. This case reminds us that the human desire for cryptids is as old as our ability to tell stories. These historical sightings are pieces of a puzzle that has never been fully put together. Stories from centuries ago continue to intrigue us, as if each one were a missing piece in a great ocean of possibilities. And the more we investigate these encounters, the more it seems that we are only touching the surface of something much deeper. Are mermaids a figment of the human mind, or is there some truth to these tales? The search for evidence of mermaids has aroused scientific curiosity over the centuries, although many of these finds have turned out to be hoaxes. One of the most notorious examples was the Fiji mermaid, exhibited by legendary showman P.T. Barnum in 1842. This supposed mummified mermaid specimen was actually an ingenious combination of a monkey and a fish sewn together. Despite the hoax, the Fiji mermaid was a huge success, revealing the public's appetite for any sign that confirmed the legends. Even after being debunked, it remains an icon of human curiosity and the ease with which we can be led to believe. Another example that made history was the supposed mermaid specimen captured in Indonesia in the early 18th century, measuring about 150 centimeters long. It is said that it was kept under observation for days until its death, which, of course, only fueled the mystery. Unsurprisingly, interest in the body was great, and it began to circulate in reports and rumors, always shrouded in uncertainty. Whether it was real or a hoax, no one knows for sure, but the fact is that it consolidated the idea that the waters of Southeast Asia could indeed hide unusual creatures. Even in Zimbabwe, there was a sighting in 2012 that interfered with a dam construction project. Workers reported seeing an unusual aquatic figure and refused to continue work, believing it to be a water spirit. To resolve the impasse, local leaders performed rituals to pacify the creature, showing how these legends can affect even modern operations. This episode proves that belief in mermaids and other cryptids is far from being a thing of the past. These investigations and sightings, whether true or not, tell us a lot about the human desire to discover the unknown. Each time a new mermaid emerges, there are those who dedicate themselves to investigating it thoroughly and others who simply choose to believe. But the point is that each time, we are reminded that mermaid legends are not stuck in the past. They continue to emerge, adapting to our deepest doubts and desires. Despite the reports and the fascination, many mermaid sightings were probably just misunderstandings of what sailors saw in the water. Animals like the manatee and the dugong, which swim gracefully and even appear to have human features from a distance, may have inspired several mermaid legends. Imagine being on the high seas with few visual references and a mind prone to fantasies. It is not difficult to understand how these aquatic mammals were mistaken for half-human beings. The illusion is almost magical, a trick of nature that has fueled generations of cryptid stories. In addition, the position in which these animals swim, often with their heads and feet. In Japanese culture, for example, there is a myth that eating mermaid meat can guarantee longevity, said to last up to 800 years. This is a curious example of how the human desire to connect with the unknown has led to the creation of traditions and superstitions. Even though mermaids are not real in the biological sense, the impact of these beliefs is very real. Imagine the impact of a belief like this on a culture. It becomes more than a story. It becomes a practice, something that shapes behaviors and even traditions. These natural explanations do not diminish the fascination that mermaids arouse. On the contrary, they only reinforce how rich these legends are. Knowing that it may be a manatee that the sailors saw does not take away the charm of the legend. In fact, it is the opposite. They remind us that our imagination is as vast as the oceans we always try to unravel. After all, if it were not for deception, we would not have so many stories to tell, and the world would be a much less interesting place. And so, between waves and mysteries, we navigate through stories that defy time and logic. Mermaids, whether they are real or just echoes of our fantasies, continue to call us from the depths. There is something about them that we simply cannot ignore, as if they carry a secret that no one, not even the most experienced of explorers, has been able to unravel. We may never know the truth, but does it really matter? After all, some mysteries are meant to remain that way, enigmas that feed our imagination and make the world seem a little more magical. When the lights go out and reality calls us back, the question that will always haunt us remains: to what extent can the legends be real? Maybe the mermaids are out there, watching us, or maybe they are just reflections of what we, humans, want to see. Either way, each story told, each tale heard, connects us to something greater, something that makes our hearts beat faster